Well, hello and welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us again for another live Q&A series. This time we're talking detox, what it is, why it's important, and how to safely do it. For those who don't know me, my name is Shannon and I'm the clinical liaison here at BLI. And I'm joined by Courtney, Director of Strategic Relations. And we are so excited to introduce you guys to our guest today, Dr. Eva Dec.
Hello,
Yay!
hello.
Yes. So thank you to everyone who is tuning in, and thank you for submitting your questions ahead of time. We got so many amazing questions. We're really excited to hear what Eva has to say about detox, and she will thoroughly explain everything. Just a reminder, this Q&A is meant to be educational and provide general information. It is not meant to serve as medical advice, and Dr. Dec won't be able to answer questions specific to your medical care or specific dosing, protocols, or recommendations. So just so everyone knows. So let's get started. Again, we are just elated to introduce everyone to Dr. Eva Dec, our newest provider at BLI. Dr. Dec brings over 16 years of diverse clinical background, spanning naturopathic and chiropractic care, holistic health counseling, and integrative nutrition. So today we're so excited to chat with Dr. Dec about all things detox. So without further ado, Dr. Dec, welcome. Thank you
Thank
for joining
you.
us. Thank you for agreeing to do a Q&A with Courtney and I.
Of
Um,
course, of course, my pleasure.
Obviously, we're going to chat detox, but before we dive into that, I would love for everyone to get to know you a little bit more. So if
Sure.
you would just share a little bit about yourself and your background and what led you to where you are today and why detox is so important to you.
Great. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for having me. So excited. This is our first Q&A together. So I, hope for many more. And detox is such a loaded topic that, we're going to have so much more to say in future Q&As, I'm sure. So we'll just kind of look for, our audience's questions and the topics they want to hear more about pertaining to detox or something else altogether. But yeah, I'm so thrilled to be here. So thrilled to be part of BLI team and, to really talk about detox, which it's really my favorite topic because it's such a game changer to many of the patients that I've worked with. And I think I really enjoy working with complex and highly sensitive patients. And I noticed that they're the ones that are impacted by the toxic burden the most. So that's kind of what initially drew me into that. How can we help these really complex patients? And it started to kind of basically develop itself into looking into some of those more complex causes like toxic burden. And what led me into the field of natural or functional or longevity medicine is actually my own journey, my own health crisis back in college, actually in my undergrad. Just for whatever reason, I started to really completely start to really completely feel exhausted for no reason. No, someone in my age back then should not be sleeping 10-12 hours a day and being completely tired from from morning to dusk. And so I really wanted to find out the cause of my mysterious symptoms, and no one could really figure them out. No conventional practitioner that I went to could really figure them out. And also around the same time, my mom was really sick as well. She had two autoimmune conditions, and she was in a lot of pain, pretty much 24/7. So we both were pretty desperate to find some answers. And we finally started to see that maybe we should look into naturopathic medicine a little bit more, into herbology, into nutrition. And when we met with the specific practitioner who specialized in naturopathic medicine, she really focused on detoxification and personalized nutrition. And when we took that in, some of the advice that she gave us, within just a few months, we had these incredible transformations with our health that I was just blown away. And so that's when I realized that I have to make this kind of work my lifelong mission. And so I actually decided to change careers completely because back then I was studying public communications as my undergrad and really hoping to pursue a career in copywriting. So that's kind of what I started doing initially, but then after seeing what was possible with nutrition and personalized medicine, I knew that I really had to go in a completely different direction. When you're sick and then you get your health back, that's really what you really see that that's what matters. That's the foundation to everything. You can't pursue any other hobbies or passions if you're not feeling well, right? If you don't have the energy to invest into those things. So I decided to actually study nutrition first. I went to the Institute for Integrative Nutrition in New York, where I got certified as a holistic health counselor and a holistic nutritionist. And I did that for a few years. I did counseling, coaching, and nutrition for a few years with clients. But I still kind of came across those complex people, right? Where we still needed to dig a little bit deeper, do more testing or more diagnostics. And you can't really do that as a health coach. At least it's not really in your scope of practice. So since I wanted to do doctor things, I had to become a doctor. So I decided to pursue that in my early 30s when I decided to get dual degrees in chiropractic and naturopathic medicine. And I did that in a school just outside of Chicago. So yeah, that's kind of the background how I got here, kind of from writing, communications to health and natural medicine. And then what really drew me to detox was really seeing how toxic burden is affecting a lot of people's ability to heal or preventing their ability to heal. And I always like to share some stats because I think they're really kind of eye-opening as to how hidden these toxins are and how unaware many of us are, and that we're exposed to so many compared to what our ancestors were exposed to, 100 years ago. So just to give you a bit of an idea, we are currently dealing with over 80,000 chemicals in the US alone. So that's a staggering statistic that I think it's hard to kind of wrap your mind around and see how burdened we are. I kind of really understand how burdened we are with toxins. Also, CDC is showing that about 90 to 100% of Americans have detectable levels of things like mercury, BPAs, which are these plastic chemicals that disrupt our hormones. Also PFAs, which are known as forever chemicals that are found in nonstick cookware, food packaging, and many other sources. So we're finding a lot of these things in most of our blood samples, most of American blood samples. And the health impact is really staggering. Just in 2019, there have been about 2 million reported deaths linked to chemical exposures. And actually, lead exposure accounted for nearly half of those deaths. So, lead is pretty much the most common heavy metal that we are exposed to. So yeah, with numbers like this, I knew I had to dive deeper. I knew I had to do something to help those, especially canaries, like we like to call them, those really sensitive patients that will alert us to something being off with our environment a little bit earlier than someone who's not as sensitive. Um, and so that's kind of what brought me to BLI. Actually, I moved here from Chicago about a couple of years ago. And coincidentally, Chicago is kind of the hotspot for lead exposure because it's such an old city and it has such old drinking, services, outdated lead service lines and drinking water systems. And so I'm kind of happy I left that behind, right? And don't have to worry about that additional exposure from lead. But yeah, when I moved here from Chicago, I really wanted to join a practice that was progressive, that really aligned with my approach, and BLI is exactly what I was looking for. The use of the innovative therapies like peptides that we have here for complex cases, and also the focus on cellular medicine, which is near and dear to my heart because that's what detox is all about. You have to detox at the cellular level. So when you can optimize cellular function, that's where the magic really happens and people start to heal and have lasting results. So yeah, I'm really excited to be part of the team that understands this connection. So
Well, we're happy to have you. Yeah, thank you for the story and background. And obviously, like you alluded to, we're living in a very toxic world, and we're grateful for people like you that are willing to, I think, a lot of times in medicine, the really complex patients are the ones that, providers aren't as excited to work with.
Right.
So we're happy to have you, excited to help those patients out.
Yeah.
So I think one question just to kind of ground us, because, we've talked about detox, and obviously there's so many toxins that we need to detoxify from, but what does that actually mean? For everybody listening, what does detox actually mean at the simplest level in our modern day landscape?
Yeah, so detoxification is just really about supporting what your body does naturally already, right? So processing and eliminating waste materials, environmental toxins, and metabolic byproducts that build up in the body over time. So that's something that we do kind of 24/7, right? We don't have to pause and say, "Oh, detox my body." Let's go ahead and take a break for detox right now, right? It happens all the time. We have an amazing built-in system. It's your liver, your kidneys, or even your lungs will help with detox. Skin, the lymphatic system, are all kind of working around the clock to filter what doesn't belong in the body. And your liver is such a underappreciated organ, I'd say, because it's got so much on its plate these days, especially with the modern day toxins. But it's such a sophisticated chemical processing plant, anyways. And for most people, it tends to keep up, right? It tends to keep up even with the increase in toxins. The challenge is that, in the modern world, we're exposed to so many synthetic chemicals and processed foods and the heavy metals like lead, like I mentioned, that's something that our ancestors never had to worry about. So sometimes that toxin load can be a little bit overwhelming, especially to our canaries, our sensitive types like myself. So yeah, that's when we have to kind of dig a little bit deeper and do a little bit more sophisticated detox protocols for those patients. But for most people, real detoxification isn't about like these extreme cleanses or like really dramatic measures, because those can actually backfire a little bit more than they can help. They can redistribute toxins, and we reabsorb them and get sicker than we were to begin with. But just really kind of helping your body gently to support the natural detox organs is what I'm all about. Definitely my naturopathic, training kind of ingrained that in our brains to always kind of look to the body and remove interferences, and the body tends to take over from there. So yeah, that looks like, really having as healthy of a diet as you can manage, right? So focusing more on whole foods. I especially love sulfur-rich vegetables, which most of us don't eat enough of, right? So, our parents and grandparents were right when they said eat your broccoli. And that's more important than ever now because broccoli contains those sulfur compounds, along with other cruciferous vegetables that really help the liver out, to really, love our liver. And then staying well hydrated is another important and underutilized, a trick that, we're all kind of maybe not doing our best with. I think most of us walk around dehydrated, especially here in Colorado. I find that a little bit harder after moving here from Chicago to stay on top of your hydration here. And then, yes, moving our body also regularly is so important for detox, especially for the lymphatic system. And unfortunately, a lot of us are sedentary, right? So we have to keep that in mind, that kind of interferes with the normal detox pathways as well. And then all the other things, getting enough sleep, quality sleep, managing our stress, just really a holistic approach, right, to the body and minimizing its stresses. So yeah, really kind of creating that internal environment so the body doesn't have those interferences and can do the majority of the work for us.
Yeah, I think you kind of touched on a really important point, and as we get deeper into the questions, we'll come out even more. But the word detox has become a little bit wrapped up in the trends, at least from my perspective, right? And we're hearing a lot about microplastics and detoxing from microplastics, and
Right.
juice cleanses are a form of detox, and this and that. But people forget, like, our bodies are a naturally detoxing system. Like, we are always being exposed to chemicals, and now we just have more of them. So you kind of hit on, and let's just to really quickly give our, core detox pathways, obviously the liver, and which is highly underappreciated, and we put through a lot of challenges.
We do.
And then you mentioned also the skin, the lungs, what are other organs or body systems that are kind of critical to detox pathways?
Yeah, I think definitely liver is your detox superstar. I know we definitely want to make sure we give as much love to the liver as I mentioned because it is so overwhelmed. But also kidneys, the kidneys are sophisticated filters too, so built in naturally, right? So they process about 50 gallons of blood daily, so a lot of waste material moving through our kidneys. And actually, after a liver, kidneys are typically the ones that are a little bit more damaged or dysfunctional due to toxins because they deal with so much to clear that out of our bodies. So definitely making sure we hydrate, right? That's the thing that gets once again repeated over and over again, and we think yes, it's important, but we just don't realize how crucial. Yes, me too, right?
Everyone take a
And
sip of water.
Every time Eva says hydrate, every time I
yeah,
take a sip of water.
you'll be surprised, some of the patients I've seen with like hypertension, and like the simplest change we made was just making sure they keep track of their water intake and hypertension goes away, right? So, yeah, it's sometimes those really simple tools that we take for granted. So, yeah, supporting the kidneys. Also, lungs, I think we forget that lungs are a detoxifying organ too. So, with every breath, you are detoxifying, you're expelling carbon dioxide and other gaseous waste products. So deep breathing is actually doing a lot more for you than just relaxing you. It's detoxifying you at the same time. And then we mentioned skin too. It's the largest organ, detox organ. So definitely making sure we eliminate toxins through sweating. And the skin also serves as a protective barrier against a lot of toxins and environmental exposure. So protecting your skin barrier or moisturizing it, which is also harder to do here in Colorado, but it brings us back to hydration as well, right? And then the lymphatic system. And I think just to spend a little bit more time on lymphatic system, I think is important because oftentimes we hear that a lot. But we
Right, like what is the lymphatic system for
yeah, because it's not like an organ, right? Where you can like point to it. Oh, it's the liver or the kidneys, right? This is what it's doing. So lymphatic system is, I like to think of it kind of as a network of vessels and nodes that act as your body's drainage system. So the vessels will carry the lymph fluid throughout your body, collecting different types of waste materials, toxins, different proteins from tissues. And then this fluid will pass through the lymph nodes, which are often concentrated in areas like your neck, your armpits, your groin, around your digestive organs. Breast tissue for women, especially, is highly saturated with the lymphatic system or lymph nodes. And so that's where that's where the lymph, the kind of the nodes are the stations where the immune cells will neutralize pathogens and process waste. But unlike the circulatory system or our circulation, cardiovascular system, the lymph has no pump naturally, right? So we have to be moving and brushing our skin to get that system to work for us as optimally as possible. And muscle movement, just any muscle movement will do it, but also breathing will help as well. And so, yeah, that's sometimes we become a little bit more aware of the lymphatic system when we're sick with a cold or flu, because you'll get a nodule that's a little bit swollen because we have an infection that the body's fighting. So that's how to understand. That's how it's best to understand the lymphatic system. And then, of course, we have our digestive system. We can't take that for granted too. We have to make sure we eliminate our bowels. The colon is eliminating solid waste, and also the gut microbiome is helping us break down toxic compounds and support our lymphatic and immune function as well.
Yeah, I think people kind of forget, right? They think of just like you said, just the organ or just the key part of the body that's responsible, but it's all of those things in synchronicity, like bringing the whole detox system online.
Exactly.
One thing I want to connect a dot for people is I think at least in the worlds that I'm seeing online and on media, there's a lot of emphasis on like the shake plates or like bouncing on like
Yeah.
trampolines
Mhm.
and really that's because of exactly what you said on the lymphatic system. Like it's a really easy way, just doing some jumping jacks or like
Yeah.
bouncing or jumping rope. That's a good way to turn your lymphatic system on.
Exactly. It kind of creates that pump for us, right? That we don't have with the lymphatics.
Oh, okay. That's why everyone's buying those little trampolines for their
Yeah,
house.
rebounder.
Right.
Those are trending right now.
Yeah.
I really want one of the shake plates, but they're like
Yeah,
$3,000.
those
So.
are awesome too. You can do like headstands on them.
Yeah.
I've seen people do all sorts of little, movements on them that I'm impressed by for sure.
Yeah, thank you for all that. I had one quick question I was curious about in the hydration. Do you recommend for your patients or clients to do any sort of addition to the water, like any
Yeah.
electrolytes,
Mhm.
or what do you usually recommend?
Yeah, definitely, because we want to start with really purified water. We want to make sure the water has none of the contaminants. But usually, when we do that through, filtration processes like reverse osmosis, we also take the good things out at the same time, unfortunately, right? So all the minerals and electrolytes that could still be found in tap water are also taken out when we go through those more extensive filtration processes or filters. So yeah, I definitely want to make sure we replace what we're missing, right? What we took away. The best way to hydrate is for us to have some minerals naturally coming in, right? So we can put a little bit of lemon juice in the water that will give us some of those electrolytes and minerals on top of vitamin C. We can also use a little bit of sea salt. Some individuals like put a little sea salt, maybe lime juice at the same time. I often do that because I often think that I'm drinking like a virgin margarita then,
Yes.
right? Because it's salty and sour at the same time. And yeah, and some people prefer just to do like the ionic electrolyte drops, right? So those tend to have a bit of a metallic flavor to them, those. So you still might want to put a little bit of juice or something to mask the taste. But yeah, the water, follows the minerals into the cell, right? So we have to make sure we get the sodium and the potassium and magnesium and other, trace minerals in there. And that's when the hydration really happens for us because the water will follow that.
Okay. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. It's great.
Yeah. Mhm.
Well, yeah, thanks for laying all that foundation. We had a few questions asking about the order of detox. So,
Okay.
Ramya and Lene both asked about which steps in the detox process should be done first and
Mhm.
subsequently. And can you touch on why that matters?
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. The order of detox is critical because we need to ensure that the body's exit doors and windows are wide open, right, before we start mobilizing toxins. So I often like to think of it as we're cleaning a dusty attic, right? We're doing some deep cleaning of our dusty attic. And so we definitely would make sure all the windows and doors are open when we're doing that because otherwise we'll just end up redistributing the dust right everywhere and making the air quality worse, not better. So that's kind of what I tell to my patients is happening within their bodies, right? If they start to do detoxes on their own, especially, and they haven't prepped the body sufficiently ahead of time, then yeah, we can have some detoxes that backfire. So yeah, that's why I always want to make sure we take some time and do something like a prep phase. So I like to call it pre-tox instead of going straight into detox. Taking just a couple weeks or even up to a month to properly prepare for detox can be life-changing. It can really help to ensure that your bowels are moving regularly so toxins can actually exit. Your kidneys are filtering things efficiently, especially with adequate hydration. And that's a habit that also takes time to develop, right? Adequate hydration. So taking some time to be more cognizant or conscious of that so it becomes a habit. And then the lymphatic system, right? We want to make sure we start the rebounder, right, for a couple of weeks ahead of time, or do the dry brushing. And then sweating, if whether it's through exercise or, gardening or going to a sauna, right, a couple times a week, just opening up that elimination pathway is really important too. So yeah, we start with the bowel movements for sure. And you'll be surprised how many people struggle with that solely. And those are the individuals we really have to work a little bit longer with to make sure they're going at least once a day. Ideally 2, 3 times a day. I would like to see our, patients move their bowels. pretty much anytime you're eating a substantial meal, you should get that urge to go, right? So we should be kind of striving to poop like babies do, right? Before we became compromised with toxins and the stresses of life. So yeah, really kind of striving for that for our digestion, because otherwise those toxins will sit in the colon and get reabsorbed. So making sure you increase your fiber intake, which I think is like the number one deficiency all around the world, but especially here in America. We talk a lot about protein being important, but no one is really deficient in protein, critically deficient in protein, I would say. But I do think we're critically deficient in fiber as a society. Our intestines are really designed for about 100 grams of fiber per day, and I would say the average person gets about 12 to 15 grams. So yeah, it's a really big deficit, right? And no wonder we're struggling. No wonder our microbiome is imbalanced, and we can't
Do you
detox
think, Dr.
properly.
Deck, that those are kind of the two, like hydration and fiber are really the two keys when it comes to the digestive side?
Yes, for sure. Yeah, and another thing is that we often also don't consider the effects of caffeine, right? Now, a lot of us are coffee drinkers or caffeine drinkers. It's so pervasive in our society, and obviously that will dehydrate you more, and that will also irritate your bowels sometimes. Sometimes it will stimulate a bowel movement, but it's not in a healthy way, right? We want to make sure the fiber is what's making up that urge to go, right? Yeah. And then also magnesium is another big deficiency. So if we include some of that into our diet or supplement regimen, we can see better bowel movements. And then of course we also want to make sure the next order is the kidneys, right? We want to make sure going back to hydration, they're flushing efficiently. So drinking about half of your body weight in ounces will be the goal for most people. So if you weigh about 150 pounds, you want to strive for about 75 ounces per day. Of course, that goes up with any type of extensive workout, right, or sweating, or if we are big caffeine drinkers. Um, and then lymphatic system, we talked about that. That's our body's garbage collection service. So we need to support it with movement to kind of replace the pump that it's missing. And then also dry brushing, for 3 to 5 minutes before showering, kind of going towards your heart with, arms and legs, is really helping to stimulate those lymphatic channels. And yeah, actually, I came across a study recently about the rebounder benefits. Obviously, it's great for the lymphatic system, but it also is great for the immune system, which is tied intimately to the lymphatic system too. But one of the studies that I looked at actually showed that just 2 minutes of rebounding, not even doing like the 10 to 15 minutes that's typically recommended, just 2 minutes will triple your white blood cell count significantly. So it's
So I think we need BLI branded trampolines. Is what I'm
Yeah.
hearing.
And
Yeah, we should all have a little trampoline in our office. Just
but
take a
also
little
like you've
time.
got your inner child
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I'm curious about this. I've seen the dry brushing. I
Uh-huh.
didn't realize it was so important for the lymphatics. I didn't know what it was. I thought it was like more like for
Mhm.
aesthetics.
Right.
So is it what is it made of or what is the brush?
Yeah, so there's different kinds, they're definitely a little bit more coarse in texture. You don't want something too soft. There's definitely like bamboo type ones that I have, for instance. So yeah, I think you definitely want to just make sure that the direction is appropriate. You don't want to go down, you want to go towards the heart, towards kind of the concentration of the lymphatic channels, right? So everything can kind of flow out of the body nicely. So yeah, it's just a few minutes before you get in the shower. You don't want to do it on wet skin because it's much harder to get that traction going.
Oh, okay. Thank
Yeah.
you. Yeah, I was just like, oh, you've mentioned it a couple of times. I did not realize how important it was.
Yeah, I have that brush hanging in my shower too, looking at me every day and I shower and sometimes, I'll forget too, but I'm like, okay, before I turn the water on, let's
Oh,
put this puppy to good use, right? So yeah,
okay.
keeping it in
So
the shower would
shopping
be.
list, mini trampoline, dry brush,
Yep, there
water.
you go. Yep, there you go. And electrolytes or lemons, limes.
Yes.
Sea salt, yep, it's another good one. Yeah, so then the lymphatic system is supported the best that way. Also contrast showers, if you're a fan of, kind of alternating the hot and cold. I'm not either, so it's not for everybody. I like my showers really hot, even in the summertime. But yeah, some people really see the difference when they alternate. Um, and then sweating, right? We want to make sure we sweat. That's another crucial detox pathway. So whatever you need to do to sweat at least a little bit every day, like 15 to 20 minutes, whether it's going on like a more brisk walk or wearing more layers when you're walking, so you induce that sweating a little bit faster, or just doing things, around the house, cleaning, vacuuming, or outside, right? Always going outside is healthier, right, for many other reasons. But yeah, just gardening, if you're into that, would definitely stimulate the sweating pathway as well.
So
Yeah,
that's still all kind of pre-tox, right? And
yeah,
really that's when you talk about order, it's like, all right, first let's get the bowels moving, like let's turn
yeah,
all the body's natural systems on, bowels,
right.
kidneys, lymphatic, and then
Mhm.
sweat as a really awesome way to just clear toxins fast. So now
Exactly.
you've kind of got people at least moving their detox systems, right?
Yeah,
And
waking them
then you're
up.
ready to move into
Mhm.
like a detox protocol.
Yeah, and then we're ready to support the liver a little bit more intentionally, I would say. So we don't want to jump to the liver too quickly.
Right.
We want to make sure that it has the nutrients that it needs to go through the different phases of detox that it does. So that's when we want to focus on diet a little bit more. We want to increase those cruciferous vegetables. Not many of us are fans of them, but find the one that you like, kind of like or tolerate, whether it's cauliflower, or broccoli or kale. Or you might also like garlic and onions, and beets are also fantastic for the liver. Of course, there's also supplements, that we can include too, which will have a concentrated amount of some of these nutrients that come from the veggies. So yeah, I definitely would recommend spending some time on making sure that you have a liver plan in mind. Um, I often also like to use castor oil packs on the liver. That's a really common naturopathic strategy. And this comes from the palm of Christ plant. And it contains this specific fatty acids that has very really demonstrated anti-inflammatory benefits. It improves circulation and lymphatic drainage, and you just kind of place a castor oil pack on the liver, side of the body where the liver is located, which is kind of under the rib cage on the right side, and that really helps to gently stimulate the liver as well. And yeah, and then understanding that the liver detoxes through three different pathways or phases is also crucial because they really need to work in harmony. That's kind of like a three-stage water filtration system. So we want to make sure that all the filters are working, right? So we have phase one that really breaks down those fat-soluble toxins like alcohol, medications, pesticides, and it uses something called cytochrome P450 enzymes, which are really enzymes that modify toxins to make them water soluble. So we go from fat soluble to water soluble. However, that tends to create more toxic intermediates. I kind of like to call them like sharper, more dangerous pieces. So we want to make sure we also support phase two, which kind of tags or what we call conjugates those intermediates using 6 different pathways on its own to really kind of move that compound out of the body more safely. Um, I like to think of conjugation also kind of like putting a handle and a shipping label on a package that's considered, fairly dangerous and that can be carried out of the body safely. And then after that, we have phase three, which brings us back to digestion or bowel movements, right? So this is where we are transporting neutralized compounds from the liver cells and into bile and blood for elimination by the bowels, kidneys, or other pathways. So the order really matters, right? We want to make sure that we don't outpace phase one or phase two. We are not too fast with detoxing from phase one because then those intermediate toxins can accumulate and then we'll have various detox symptoms.
Mm.
And then, of course, if phase three is not working properly, then we reabsorb and those recirculated toxins, unfortunately, which can make us feel a lot worse than when we started. And we often refer to those reactions as the Herx reactions or Herxheimer's reactions.
Oh, okay.
So really quick, because I know, sorry, Shannon, I just want to ask one other question. So I think that's a really like valuable for everyone to understand that phase one is the breakdown of what in our head is the like initial toxin into phase two, which are like these much more, discrete, deeper toxin molecules. And then phase three is the clearing of. Just to put the names out there, we don't need to get into each of the 6 pathways of phase two, but just so people can hear what those are, because I think we sometimes hear those words being tossed around. Can you just share like what is happening in that phase two at the high level?
Yeah, so we definitely rely quite a bit on the master antioxidant called glutathione. That kind of happens in the first phase of a first step, first pathway of that phase two detox. So we want to make sure we have plenty of glutathione to neutralize toxins because we need it to tag those toxins, right? Well, when we get to that phase. Then we also have something called sulfation, where we're adding different compounds to hormones and neurotransmitters and making them water soluble for elimination as well. And then a really important pathway is called methylation, which I think is really kind of trendy too. A lot of us hear about that, how important it is to methylate well. So that's when we add a methyl group, which is a compound made up of carbon and hydrogen groups. And we just want to make sure we add that to things like estrogens and heavy metals to make them, once again, safer, water soluble, and ready for elimination. And then we have 3 more pathways called glucuronidation, acetylation, and amino acid conjugation. So all of those are also making all the different environmental toxins more water soluble. We're also attaching to compounds like caffeine and certain medications and making them water soluble. And then also proteins, amino acids are critically important, especially things like glycine and taurine. They help us to make some toxins water soluble as well. So yeah, it's quite an involved process in that phase two. So that's why it's so important to make sure we're ready before we start.
Right, yeah, that's where the order and the prep really matter. Yeah. No, thank you for that. I think that's really, people don't understand that there's so much, nuance to the different steps as they occur.
Yeah, liver is our superstar for sure.
Yeah. And I was going to say too, I know it's trending to know if you have the MTHFR gene, and I'm like, oh, I'm a bad methylator, but I don't know what that means. So I'm like excited to learn that that's in the phase two of the liver.
Yeah, definitely. That's where the B vitamins, the really bioavailable B vitamins come into play. And I always say most people should be on a really high quality B complex because we lose B vitamins so quickly, especially due to stress. They're water soluble, so we pee them out really quickly too. They don't get stored in the body typically. So yeah, it's just such an important phase to not get wrong. We want to make sure we get that one right.
Well, thank you for going in depth. Before we start talking about that, I was curious, you mentioned a Herxheimer reaction. What is that? Can you say like what that is and why that might occur?
Yes.
Other than your new favorite German word.
Say it again, Shannon.
Herxheimer.
Yep. You can just call it Herxing. That's kind of the easier way to say it. And I butchered that last name to Herxheimer. Yeah, it's for those of us who are not familiar with that term, it basically means that the body's saying, oh, whoa, like slow down. Things are moving too fast, right? We're cleaning out that dusty attic a little bit too fast and we're causing everyone to sneeze, right? So you're stirring up too much dust than the body can handle. And the term comes actually from these 2 doctors, these 2 dermatologists who first saw this phenomenon happen when they saw worsening of symptoms in syphilis patients when they were starting mercury treatments. So mercury actually was a treatment back in the day. Now we know better, right? So yeah, that's where the term comes from. And so we kind of adapted it, especially in the naturopathic medicine world, to describe similar like die-off reactions during detox protocols. And so the symptoms can be pretty uncomfortable when you're herxing. It can be things like headaches, brain fog, fatigue. You can kind of feel like you're hit by a truck. You can have nausea, flu-like symptoms. And I think people that are more prone to herxing are those that are people that are just really are fast phase 1 detoxifiers. So, they just feel horrible when they're drinking alcohol or taking certain medications because they metabolize them so quickly. And then phase 2 cannot keep up. It cannot conjugate them fast enough or tag them fast enough for elimination. So this is why cruciferous vegetables are so important because they support both phases, phase 1 and phase 2. So once again, going back to eating your broccoli can help you mitigate the Herx reactions. But I also say that if you are herxing, not to panic, kind of just take kind of an observation of your body and see, okay, things are detoxing, but I'm moving too fast or maybe too aggressively for my systems to handle. So just kind of step back and, what you want to do immediately is increase your water intake and, go back to that, right? Check if you've been tracking it well, and definitely maybe take some binders like activated charcoal is a great binder for circulating toxins. Go back to stimulating lymph flow, maybe take an Epsom sea salt bath, right? So do all those things to really slow the process down. But yeah, it's nothing to be too scared of. I sometimes will help some of my patients who really struggle with that, maybe by recommending some coffee enemas. So not drinking it, through the oral channel, but up the rectum, right? So not everybody's that brave, but some people who really struggle really see benefits of that, because what that does is actually enhances the glutathione S transferase enzyme system, so you can have more easy toxin elimination, more efficient toxin elimination. So that's how we get around the Herx reactions a little bit. But I think the most important thing to do is to kind of slow down or pause until you feel better and then pick it up again. Because really a good detox should not make you feel really sick. It should make you feel more energetic and clear-headed, and not worse.
Yeah, it actually leads us, because you touched on it, but I didn't have a full appreciation for, why are some people like bad metabolizers, and like, they drink alcohol and it really
Yeah.
messes them up, versus other people can process that a little bit more.
Right.
And so we talked about it a little bit before, but we did have a couple of questions on the genetic side of
Yeah.
detoxing. And,
Oh,
why is somebody a better detoxer than another? And so specifically, how do genetic differences influence detox capacity? And how do you personalize protocols based on genetic testing? So can you, I mean, Shannon kind of alluded like MTHFR and there's genes
yeah.
that matter,
Mhm.
but where does the genetic component come in?
Yeah, such a great question. I love genetics and looking at how those differences, those what we call polymorphisms, really how they impact the genetic process, but so many other things in general, for sure. When we're looking also at our immune response, our stress response, it can be definitely intimately tied to our genetics. But yeah, when it comes to detox, the difference can create dramatic variations in our detox capacity. We're talking about like 1,000-fold difference in some of the cytochrome P450 enzymes in phase 1 detox, and then also about 4-fold variations in the phase 2 pathways between individuals. So that means is, let's say person A might metabolize a toxin about 1,000 times faster than a person B. So that difference is literally going between clearing something in minutes versus days or weeks, right? So it's the difference between handling something, a normal exposure versus being completely overwhelmed by it, which we see with those more sensitive or complex case patients. So yeah, it's so important to take that into consideration and not think that someone is being incompliant with their recommendations or is not working hard enough on their health, because we don't all start out the same, right? This thing, life in our bodies that don't start at a fair race, right? We all come into this world with some disadvantages, some advantages from the biological standpoint, and detox is one of those. So yeah, I like to think of the detox kind of like a factory with different assembly lines and how that pertains to the genetics. So some people are just really fast, have like really fast and efficient moving lines, and other ones have slower ones. And really the main players are those cytochrome 450 enzyme differences, and then also glutathione transferase enzymes, and then N-acetyl transferase enzymes as well. Those are kind of the 3 main genetic variations, or SNPs as we like to call them, that we look for. So yeah, it's a game changer that we have the info on genetic testing now, right? And it's consumer available. You don't have to go through your doctor anymore. If you want, you can. If you want to, we definitely do that here for our clients. But there are panels that are consumer accessible, like Strategene, Nutrition Genome is another one. And 3x4 genetics is a third one that I'm thinking of. And I really like Strategy because it's one that's designed by Dr. Ben Lynch, who's the author of Dirty Genes book that many of us have heard of. And his genetic testing really heavily focuses on detox and methylation pathways. So that's how we can really get to the bottom of those difficult patients, right? And see how they differ from the average person without the SNPs. Um, and so how can we personalize it though? So if we do have access to those to that data, we can see who's a slow metabolizer, for instance. So we can maybe give them gentler, longer detox support with more targeted nutrients like an acetylcysteine or glutathione, which really help that that phase two pathway or phase two detoxification process. We also can give some people a little bit more B vitamins, right? Or the bioavailable B vitamins and the methyl donors. We also may need to slow down some things for the ultra rapid metabolizers. So it kind of gives us a little bit of a nuance, right, in making those recommendations. But I also think it's really important not to be overly focused on the genetic information. Right? We always like to say that genes load the gun, but your lifestyle really pulls the trigger. So really kind of making sure we still bring it back to the basics, still focus on environmental factors, stress, sleep, diet, because all those express our genes, right? So epigenetics is what we're really focusing on here. Yeah, so that's kind of the gene aspect of it. And
Yeah.
then, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I was gonna say, I think, yeah, one thing, where just to highlight what you're saying, at BLI, like our core panel, we don't run a bunch of genetics except for those, right? Just because that does ground us and okay, what sort of handicap, I guess, is that patient starting from because they're a bad methylator or they have these certain SNPs. So it's definitely a good thing to know. And to your point, though, it's not dictated then that that's your lifestyle. We can just provide more support for it.
Yeah, you're not doomed. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. You're not doomed.
Customize it, right? You just have to personalize it, which is where medicine really shines, is when we can truly personalize it to the patient in front of us.
So I know we're gonna probably go over a couple minutes, but we'll cruise through a couple other questions. Briefly, this is a little bit of a specific question, but I think worth calling attention to since we're talking genetics. We did have a question, and Deborah asked about primary mitochondrial disease or function primary mitochondrial disease and kind of how does your mitochondrial function, whether it's working properly or not working, run into this detox conversation.
Gotcha. Yeah, I think it's important to define primary mitochondrial disease first because I don't think a lot of people have heard of that. It's a really great question. We don't get a lot about the primary diseases. We don't see a lot of those patients either. But yeah, we definitely don't get a lot of questions. And so what that means is that the mitochondria, which is kind of like the tiny powerhouse inside our cell, right, pumps out ATP or those energy carrying molecules. They just don't work properly as they should due to genetic defects. So if we think of mitochondria as our battery cells, when they're faulty, you just cannot generate enough energy to support normal function. And especially the organs that demand a lot of energy, like your brain, like your heart, your muscles and liver, they really start to suffer. So that's something that unfortunately, those patients with primary mitochondrial disease have to endure. And how that differs from secondary mitochondrial dysfunction is that secondary dysfunction occurs usually, we start off with a healthy mitochondria, but then something happens in our lifetime. Maybe some factors will damage it, like toxins or medications or infections, especially see that with COVID, right? When it comes to viruses being such a potent pathogen. And even just aging will decrease our mitochondrial function. So that's how those two differ. And so it's really important to make sure that when we do have a person in front of us who has a primary mitochondrial disease, we really kind of approach the detox protocols with a healthy amount of caution with them. Because Some aggressive methods or even traditional detox methods can backfire, can be potentially harmful, and can overwhelm the already compromised mitochondria, can trigger more fatigue, more symptoms, and can even lead to some organ dysfunction. So for those individuals, I really kind of like to focus on supportive methods rather than going straight into something, like chelation, which can have some more side effects. But supportive things, like mitochondrial nutrients, we can include a little bit more of in those individuals. Like coenzyme Q10 is a great mitochondrial nutrient. Alpha lipoic acid is another one. Magnesium, B complex, all those foundational nutrients we probably need a little bit more of, or kind of stay on top of a little bit more vigilantly, with those individuals. And then if we do need to do a little bit more chelation, if it's really indicated, I kind of also like to do the more gentle chelators with those individuals. So things like modified citrus pectin is great. Your algae like chlorella, spirulina. Zeolite is a little bit more trendy too. We're hearing a little bit more about that volcanic mineral that captures a lot of different toxins. And then alpha lipoic acid, we're going back to that one because it's also really helpful for mercury and other heavy metals in the brain tissue. So that's really helpful for brain fog, especially in those individuals.
And I just want to quickly define chelation. Chelation, right, is a molecule that has capabilities to bind to other molecules to then draw them out.
Exactly. Yeah.
Correct?
Yeah, it safely binds to them so then we can eliminate them without them being dropped or redistributed. So that's where a lot of the algae actually thrives or kind of, I think, shines. I think spirulina is something that we're seeing it being a little bit trendy too. The blue drinks we're seeing that people add, or blue powders that people add to everything. It's actually a good idea. It's like your nature's super vitamin, but also a great detoxifier and chelator.
Courtney, weren't you telling me too that the liver is made up of 70% mitochondria, or what was the study?
Yeah, that's a great call out. Yeah, because I think that's an under-recognized part of detox. What you're saying is you need your mitochondria online because it is an energy-intensive thing, and you're asking your liver especially to work really, really hard.
Yeah.
So if your mitochondria aren't on, then you're also going to struggle on all these other things.
Yeah, the liver itself uses about 20% of our daily energy. So it's a big chunk. The brain uses a lot too, but the liver is a very energy demanding organ. So we have to make sure the mitochondria is, up to par when we're supporting the liver.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for all that.
Yeah.
I wanted to move on to a few other questions. I know we've been talking about environmental toxins, and given the increase in our awareness of it and toxins in our food and water, even in our clothes and
Yeah.
the air.
Everywhere.
I feel like I've been hearing more about heavy metal detox. I know we've been touching on it. And we at BLI, we run tests on toxin load, and it can be quite shocking at first for clients to see how much the toxin load can be.
Right.
We just had a question come up that would you share your approach from Jennifer of asking, would you share your approach to nutrition, supplement, lifestyle support for heavy metal detoxification, especially mercury, arsenic, and lead? I know we've touched on mercury, but
the top common ones. The top three, especially leading with the lead. No pun intended. From the nutritional support, I always going back to the sulfur-rich foods. I think our soils are so depleted in sulfur as it is already. So we have to really up the intake of those cruciferous vegetables even more than our ancestors used to eat, because what's found in our soil now is much, much more depleted than what was found like 50 or 100 years ago. So going back to the cruciferous vegetables, even things like garlic, onions, all those things will help us bind the metals, and those three included especially. We can definitely, also emphasize antioxidant-rich foods, which, are great for many things, but also metal mobilization, heavy metal mobilization. Wild blueberries are my favorite, and we can buy those frozen pretty much anywhere now. Those are great for neutralizing free radicals, especially generated during the heavy metal detox or chelation. Also green tea, we all know that's a great antioxidant. But another one, I think another food that doesn't get enough attention or enough praise, I think, is cilantro. But just if you are a fan of cilantro, because sometimes people are super tasters, so to them it tastes like soap. So they may not be so keen on you putting cilantro in everything. But if you like it, I would sprinkle a little bit each day, especially, overdose it with the guacamole you're making, because it contains compounds that can mobilize mercury from tissues too. So that's a great food to include on an everyday basis. And then as far as supplements, the natural chelators for mercury, for instance, will be things like cilantro. So we can get that in a supplement. We can also get chlorella in a supplement form. That's great for mercury. Alpha lipoic acid, we talked about that quite a bit. Selenium is another really deficient mineral. It's just not in our soil anymore, and it really protects against mercury toxicity. So I love that one. As far as lead goes, really, common heavy metal for all of us. We want to once again include more cilantro, more garlic, vitamin C, alpha lipoic acid is a favorite there too. So they all kind of overlap, So I think we want to kind of make sure we do this on an everyday basis, or at least every other day we include some of these nutrients. Then arsenic is also really the mobilization of arsenic is really helped by cilantro and selenium and chlorella. So if you can include those foods or in a supplement form, highly, highly recommended for those top three heavy metals. Um, and I think there's also a lifestyle question. I think that component with that. So for that part, I always just want to make mention that we optimize sleep. Because we have something called the lymphatic system as well, that really gets active during nighttime or when the brain is shutting down or should be recovering. That's what activates our brain's lymphatic system, the 7 to 9 hours of sleep we get nightly. And that's where the cerebral spinal fluid washes all the heavy toxins, or the heavy metals from brain tissue during sleep. So we don't want to compromise our sleep, right? A lot of detoxification happens during that time, especially the heavy metals like mercury that get lodged in the brain.
Okay, yes.
Yeah.
Yes, yes, yes. I love just looking at all the systems and just supporting them. Like we have all these incredible systems and all these ways to support it.
I know. We take them for granted, right? We
Yeah.
definitely do. But the body's resilient. It can take on a lot of stress, right? And sometimes it just needs few things we move out of the way, those interferences, right? And then it can really shine.
Amazing. I wanted to move on to a question from Fawn. She was also asking about detoxing for vegetarians and vegans.
Oh, okay.
She is worried about oxalates and wondering how accurate the tests for oxalate overload are and what's the best approach to detox from it.
Yeah, I think we probably should define oxalates first, right? Because that term gets thrown around a lot as well. And it's definitely more common, I think, to hear it in the plant-based world or with individuals who follow more plant-based diets, because oxalates are predominant in plant foods, right? So there's no way of getting around them, especially if you like to eat a lot of things like spinach or beets or almonds, soy products. Oxalates really are high in those foods. And it's just really hard to avoid it all. And, it's also easy to see, however, how that overload can happen, oxalate overload can happen in sensitive individuals. The tests, unfortunately, are not, they do have significant limitations. Let me just put it that way. We may find, maybe some oxalate levels on like a urine test or a plasma test, but it doesn't always tell us what the amount is or level in tissue or what the tissue accumulation of oxalates actually is. So, I always like to look a little bit more at symptoms that are common with oxalates. So things like kidney stones, joint pain, brain fog, neuropathy, digestive issues, that can kind of, we can help to tie the symptoms to the test results a little bit more and make that judgment call. But if someone really wants to get some objective data, then yeah, like a 24-hour urine collection test can help us look at the oxalates. Doesn't tell us the tissue accumulation, but at least it tells us a little bit about the level at the time of the test. There's also some tests that we do here that look at what we call organic acids, and they can kind of send us along the line of looking at deficiencies, certain deficiencies that can make us more prone to oxalate sensitivity. So definitely things like B6 vitamin or glycine, if we're deficient in those nutrients, then we have a little bit of a harder time breaking down the oxalate compounds. So I always recommend making sure we don't miss that. Make sure that we look at some deficiencies that can make us more sensitive. And yeah, other things will be things like magnesium, calcium. B1 vitamin is really important for making sure the oxalate metabolism is not impaired. So yeah, if we take care of that, those foundations, then oftentimes we don't have to have like a super duper heavy detox for oxalates. It's just supporting the body's natural oxalate processing systems should be enough. But yeah, I think, everyone's different. So if you are going to reduce the foods, I would say reduce them gradually as well to help with symptom control. Don't go into sudden elimination because then you can suffer from something called oxalate dumping, where you will release a rapid store of oxalates, and that can make your symptoms a lot worse. So yeah, definitely working with a professional, a provider who has some experience with oxalates will be recommended for that person.
So I think you can maybe talk quickly about, we had, excuse me, we had two other questions about other toxins. We've talked, heavy metals, oxalates. I don't think you can talk about detox without talking about alcohol. So that,
Yeah.
how does that play into it?
Yeah.
So let's maybe start there and just quick thoughts on alcohol and
Yeah, great
help
question.
yourself.
Because we see that a lot as doctors, especially, and many of us doctors drink still too. We some of us still can't make the full transition to mocktails, right? But it's something that we can't really sugarcoat. Alcohol is a poison. It is something that it's a carcinogen, right? No carcinogen. So we have to make sure we're aware of what we're doing to ourselves when we're consuming it. It is a true hepatotoxin or liver toxin, and the body will break it down. It'll first break it down to what we call acetaldehyde, which is actually more toxic than alcohol itself or ethanol itself. So that's what gives people the hangovers, right? The ill feeling that we get after we're done from enjoying alcohol. So yeah, we want to make sure we support ourselves a little bit there if we have to drink, right? If we have to know, or if we have to socialize, we know we're going to be drinking. We can prepare a little bit ahead of time to minimize that hangover feeling or that toxification essentially. So we want to take maybe a little bit of that NAC, that N-acetylcysteine, which will help to replenish glutathione. We want to take our B complex vitamins, especially B1 and B6 will help us with alcohol detox. Also, milk thistle is a great botanical to protect liver cells and support regeneration. So all those things would be great. And then just simple strategies, with lemon water for liver function, and then a little bit more of vitamin C because we want that antioxidant as well to counter the effects. And then maybe ahead of time, as well, maybe eating a little bit more protein, eating more fats to slow down alcohol absorption. And yeah, just alternating maybe the alcoholic drinks with water, taking a little bit of a break that way can help to take the burden off the detox system.
Yeah, my dad calls them water spacers.
There you go.
That's-
Yeah. My mom puts ice cubes in her wine, which I know is like the thing to do. But she's like, I don't have a hangover when I do that because I'm hydrating at the same time. Yeah. There's all sorts of tricks.
Yeah, I think alcohol people know it's bad, and when you start talking detox and what it's really putting the pressure on your liver, we learn it's even worse. But
Right,
if you're
And
gonna
we're in
do
the
it, help
business.
yourself.
Yeah, I'm in the business of longevity too, right? So we definitely have to kind of nix the alcohol. There's just no way of getting around how toxic it is. Yeah.
Just this really quick popped up on spirulina as a supplement for helping with detox. Does it have to be raw and dried without heat to be effective? Do you know?
Yeah, I mean,
Or
anything closer to nature, right, as minimally processed will be most ideal because spirulina is a great source of B vitamins as well and protein. It's a really great kind of vegan source of protein. So yeah, if we minimize the processing, we'll just maximize the nutrients we're getting.
gotcha. Cool. Okay, and then we had one more about a toxin, but I think this one's a little bit overlooked when we have, heavy metals, plants, alcohol,
Yeah.
but anesthesia. We had a question from Tracy that said, for surgeries that require a local anesthetic, or then a general anesthetic, what is your recommendation to support detox pre and post surgery? And I think people don't know how toxic anesthesia is, and why that's an important thing to take into consideration when you're getting surgery.
Yeah, and a lot of people will end up with brain fog actually right after anesthesia for weeks or months at a time. They're like, what's changed? What's happened? And a lot of times it's because we really depleted our glutathione stores with the anesthesia. General anesthetics, especially like propofol, are what we call lipophilic. They really are fat-loving molecules, so they get stored in our fatty tissues a lot longer, especially the brain. So we end up with things like brain fog if maybe we didn't have enough glutathione to begin with, right? So I definitely recommend if someone is able to kind of prepare for a few weeks before surgery when they know they're about to get general anesthesia, and really go to a clinic that can offer them IV glutathione, and really kind of doing that for a few times a week before the surgery. And then post-surgery being a little bit more aggressive with the IV glutathione, taking it at higher doses and maybe a little bit longer for another month or so, post-surgery. So that really is going to help to first, if it's, when we're doing it pre-surgery, first saturate the tissues so we're protected going into the surgery. And then, of course, recover or replenish what we missed, what we, basically went through through the stresses of surgery and anesthesia. Now, for local anesthesia, it's a little bit less of a systemic burden, right? So maybe the pre-procedure protocols will be simple things like more magnesium to support nerve function and muscle relaxation, more B vitamins for sure, and then post-procedure, maybe more vitamin C for tissue healing. I'm also a big fan of homeopathic remedies, especially for swelling. So arnica is a well-known, proven homeopathic remedy for bruising and tissue trauma. And then for the local anesthesia, I would say just oral glutathione should be adequate, like liposomal form, which is also pretty well absorbed by the body. We don't necessarily have to go the full, IV route. Yeah.
Got it. Yeah, I think that's a really important, like if you are getting surgery, especially if you're going under, general anesthesia, definitely do what you can to help yourself to clear out all of that toxin from the cerebral, or from the fluid in your brain and cerebrospinal fluid.
Yeah.
I do want to kind of transition. I think that's a good jumping point because it sort of leads into, why things floating around in your brain and that fluid around your brain can get stuck, especially when you start talking about the lymphatic system. So we did have a question about TBI and detox and what, I think you mentioned the lymphatic system as turning over that fluid. What do you do for TBI to kind of help recovery from, a detox lens?
Yeah. And for those of us who may not know, that acronym TBI stands for traumatic brain injury, and that can occur from for different reasons. It could be, a car accident or a fall on your head, or any impact that causes the brain to move violently within the skull. And so, yeah, TBI really damages the blood-brain barrier. Unfortunately, we're seeing that in studies. So toxins have an easier way to get up into the brain tissue, unfortunately. It also really disrupts the brain's natural waste clearance system that we call lymphatic system. So once again, those individuals have a harder time get rid of those toxins we normally would purge during sleep. And it also causes mitochondrial dysfunction, causes neuroinflammation, that impairs detox enzymes as well. So yeah, it's an unfortunate thing that we often see with athletes, especially football players. So we want to make sure we support their brains a little bit more. So definitely more coenzyme Q10 will be indicated. Lion's mane mushroom is another great neuroprotective compound. And then yeah, prioritizing deep sleep as much as you can. That's when about 60% of your brain detoxes during deeper sleep. And then melatonin has also been known to be a powerful brain antioxidant. So I know a lot of people are taking that now. So that can be quite helpful too. Yeah.
Oh, thank you so much, Eva.
Of
So
course.
much good information. I we're going to wrap up, but I was just thinking before we end, I just wanted to see if you give one piece of advice on how to manage the increasingly toxic soup we find ourselves swimming in our everyday
Yeah.
life, and what that would be. I know it's sometimes just so overwhelming. So
Yeah.
just giving people maybe one or two things that they can focus on.
Yeah, it's hard to pick, right? Because it's such a loaded topic, and obviously we went over time because we have so much we could talk about. But I would say don't try to out supplement your toxic lifestyle, right? Because some of us will have patients or clients coming in where they will ask for like this, the best new supplement, right? Or the best new magic potion, right? That will take care of the toxic lifestyle for me. There is no way of getting around that, right? We still have to make sure we support the body through the basic things it needs to promote natural detox ability. So yeah, just start with the basic, clean up your water. Some people still drink tap water. And it's a big no-no when it comes to making sure we minimize our toxic levels, right? So choose organic as much as you can when it comes to food. Definitely, pay attention to the personal hygiene products, things you put on the skin, because skin is a sponge, right? So it'll absorb everything. Move your bowels, figure out why they're not moving if you're not going at least once or twice a day. And then, yeah, going back to the sweating, right? It's a simple, free thing we can all do. And we just, as a sedentary society, we forget how important it is and how needed that is. And breathing too, right? Breathe deeper. A lot of us have these like emergency, really shallow breaths that we take throughout the day. It goes, Courtney. Yeah, so we have to kind of remind ourselves to do those diaphragmatic breaths, right? Starting with the belly and then filling up the lungs. So yeah, and then also eat your broccoli. Going back to broccoli. So I think kind of the take-home message is to remember, to sweat more. Breathe deeper because you're not only relaxing, you're also detoxifying during that time, and eat your broccoli. So mama was right. Mama and grandma were right, and so I think that's kind of a simple way of putting it, but we often take the simple things for granted.
Awesome.
No, I love that. I think calling attention to, there's a lot of free and easy things you can do.
Yeah,
Deep sleep, sweat, that will have a massive impact before you get into the more fancy stuff.
right. Exactly. Yep.
Well, thank you so much. Thanks for your time.
My pleasure. Sorry,
Chatting.
we
Yeah,
went
thank you so
over.
much.
Yeah, we'll definitely need to do this again. To our viewers, please reach out if you'd like to see another detox Q&A. We'll probably have to do one because we didn't even get through everything. So thanks again to everyone who submitted questions. You can reach out to the clinic if you're interested in seeing Dr. Dec at BLI. And yeah, thank you again.
Yeah, I think what's our next Q&A, Shan, just to give people a
Our
heads
next
up.
Q&A will be August 1st, and that will be with David Conter. He's going to be talking about gut health. So look out for emails to sign up and register for that as well. So
Another loaded topic.
Yeah,
We've
that
gotten
one will
like two or
definitely
three Q&As. Yeah.
yeah, so
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, thank you
My
everybody for
pleasure.
joining. Good to
Thank you
see
everyone for joining. Yes. Have a great day.
You too. Thank you.
you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.